Hi, hello, welcome to Spell Day. We're covering a spell every single day of the year from the 5e PHB +3. Those +3 spells are homebrew spells. We're at +2 at the moment. You can head back in the playlist to find them, and today's spell is Speak with the Dead.
Ah! Schnipp, schnapp! Ah! Ah! Da! Ja! Ich bin Schnappi, das Krokodil! Ah! Thomas Ägypten, direkt am Nil! Ja.
Third level Necromancy, casting time of 1 action, range of 10 feet, components verbal somatic material, burning incense, duration 10 minutes. You grant the semblance of life and intelligence to a corpse of your choice within range, allowing it to answer the questions you pose. The corpse must still have a mouth and can't be undead. The spell fails if the corpse was the target of the spell within the last 10 days. Until the spell ends, you can ask the corpse up to 5 questions. The corpse knows only what it knew in life, including the languages it knew. Answers are usually brief, cryptic, or repetitive, and the corpse is under no compulsion to offer a truthful answer if you are hostile to it or it recognizes you as an enemy. The spell doesn't return the creature's soul to its body, only its animating spirit. Thus, the corpse can't learn new information, doesn't comprehend anything that has happened since it died, and can't speculate about future events. There's some contradictions in that spell. Of said contradictions, can't learn anything new, can't comprehend the events of the present around it, but it can tell if you're hostile, or if it doesn't want to, but it can make a decision to not tell you something. Though I guess those are based off old events and what it was in life to a potential point. Which, okay, alright, this is, I don't know how long this is gonna be. This is gonna be a fun one. 5 questions, doesn't have to tell the truth, and it's usually brief, cryptic, and repetitive, or repetitive. Usually. It says usually there. It sits there like that for the same reason a lot of other divination spells say similar things of like brief, cryptic, riddle-like, etc, etc, etc. It's so the DM doesn't have to give you the exact information you're asking for. But the material component isn't expensive. Not that expensive. Third level is also relatively cheap. Not the cheapest, but alright. Third level's alright. Not to mention it lasts 10 minutes, so you actually have time to discuss what 5 questions you're asking it instead of just burning through it right away, or having to prep all 5 right before you do it. Though, setting stuff and uses I've used this for, undead libraries, or spirits of the dead, or wisdom of the dead. Because yes, it has the cooldown of 10 days, but just stack up more skulls? Because you also don't need the whole body. Yes, you need the mouth, but you don't need the whole body. Don't even really need the top of the skull. You just need both the bottom jaw and then just the top rim here. I don't know what it's called. This whole crypt or library of just skulls upon skulls. Oh my goodness, the French labyrinths. The French catacombs, heading down there and being able to just head to that wall of skulls and all that cataloging and storage. Though, well, to be fair, it isn't cataloged down there. Also places like that bone church, currently forgetting which country that's in, but purposely having certain individuals or dioceses, or purposely burying, like, yeah, you bury the body of someone, and you might keep the head separate specifically so you can ask it questions later. And it might not just be for reasons of, like, cataloging like a library, because they could also decide to not tell you something, but just asking ancestors, hey, what should I do in this moment? You can have an entire culture that's just dedicated to that. So they have one person that can cast this in a village somewhere, and whenever someone has a question, they can go up and actually contact, yes, not their present self, but what they would have said, what they would have done. Lessons don't have to be just carried down through tradition. You can have the dead tell you what to do, which is a benefit and a downside, depending on how you look at certain traditions. Well, actually, I guess depending the tradition, not the... Ooh. Which means traditions can be reinforced if this is a common use or cultural practice within a fictional setting or culture. They never really move on or adapt because, I mean, sometimes that information or wisdom might just be taken away. If they do not recognize you as their own culture anymore, like you've drifted so far off from what they even recognize and they consider you a threat, they'll stop answering. So even on the point of they're not themselves reinforcing it by the answers they're giving, they'll stop talking to you if you're not like them. You can have an entire culture that's just frozen in this one specific era, or at least the cast of people that go up and ask these questions keep extremely traditionalist clothing. Like, certain phrases have to be said a certain way, specific kind of incense, specific clothing, specific role. And if they don't follow that, the ancestors won't answer. I'm getting the vibe of like the throne mechanicum of night houses from 40k. The idea that you have to appease the ancestors to get the mech to work. This one, you have to appease the ancestors to get any information out of them. And the usually part, that's down to DM. Same thing with a lot of the vague gray areas with other spells. It's just up to the DM on how it actually works. Because it says usually, that doesn't mean every situation, and it could just be a locational thing. Maybe this usually is just someone ad hoc using this, like from the D&D movie. If someone just is randomly casting this on a corpse they have no connection to, then yeah, it's cryptic, it's short. But if it's that library scenario of that culture we're talking about, you have the leeway within the spell's ruling to have it that they can give detailed accounts. Nice world building potential there. So there's also the question of disguises or how far those disguises can go. Maybe there are code words to a certain extent, like you have to repeat this oath, especially if the culture, that cultural example we brought up, has developed and this is a known thing that people who die know they're going to be asked questions later. There might be specific phrases or religious tablets or certain, think like code words, or certain things that have to be done before they'll answer you. And it's not necessarily in saying, no, I'm not going to answer you now. It's just how to recognize someone as an ally in the future. It could be a whole thing of this quest of you have to figure out all of those steps, the specific phrases, the specific gifts you're supposed to lay out in front of them, the specific clothes you're meant to wear, just so they can loosely recognize you as one of their own, or else they just won't answer you. Like maybe that culture had long died out, all the living descendants at least, and it's just the ancestral libraries left. So as an adventuring party, you gotta figure out what was needed to contact them. And maybe like the Night House scenario, they'll only talk to their descendants, specifically. Or at least what they recognize as their descendants. Only certain families having access to this ancient lore, maybe they keep spells. Like the 10 days, yes, puts a damper on it being repeatedly used, but it's still, depending on the, it's like we brought up with, it's like legend lore, where it might be that you have to have a very specific question and be asking the right person to get a specific answer. Though also the question just comes down to what's viewed as an enemy, because that comes down to the person they were in life. So if it's this inclusive culture that specifically you need to have these specific sanctions or rights or clothing, they won't listen otherwise, and it might just be any outsider. Like you might have a dwarven tomb like this, but unless you're a dwarf, they're not talking to you. Though there is the thing of it doesn't say they can just reject answering you, but they don't have to give a truthful answer if they see you this way. So, I mean, truthful answer just means they're giving an answer, but it's not the one you wanted. They could just insult you. That's technically not a truthful answer. It doesn't say they have to lie. It's just not a truthful answer. I might be stretching that wording a bit, but the idea of a corpse swearing you out, that's fun. Also, because it specifically states animating spirit, that means the head might move? Oh, no, semblance of life. And intelligence, it can physically move. But mummification takes on a new role, specifically mummifying ancient priests or elders to ask them questions later. Like, they were mummified still. What's that mummy? The live mummification, where he was still just meditating and died there. But something like that where you can still ask them questions, even long after they're dead, and they're still on that same pedestal in the same temple. Preserving the dead takes on another edge, rather than just burying them in a ditch somewhere. You want to have the skull accessible if you're going to be able to use this. Or maybe that's a point. No one does want anyone to potentially ask or get secrets from the dead, so they burn them. It's the same reason against animation. But this has some of its own internal defenses, unless they're tricked. 8 out of 10. Because if you have a whole it's based off the number. With a single corpse, it limits its use, especially if they see you as an enemy. But if you just have like catacombs to talk through, and they're all labeled and cataloged, and this is used to a certain extent. Yes, that's world building wise to a point, but even if you're a player, you're likely not just asking one corpse. As gruesome as that sounds. The more corpses you have, the more likely you're to get a valuable answer out of it. 7 out of 10. I was going to say 8, but it has its own internal restrictions. There's a lot of fun world building use with this, and potential. And then player-wise, you can still get utility out of questioning dead enemies, villains, or just, again, like digging up old cemeteries to ask someone of this ancient legend. They were around then. They might know. 7 out of 10.